Hello, thank you for tuning in for a very special edition of Garden Path. I'm Christine Paxia, and today we're doing a live episode, and I'm going to talk you through how to create a flower arrangement. The arrangement here on my right is what you'll be creating tonight, and you all picked up your flowers and with a list of what we have, but I am going to talk about the mechanics to begin with. So inside you all received a vase or vase container, however you say it, tomato, and I crumpled up some chicken wire. And the chicken wire is just what it is, it's chicken wire. So I cut it, I counted 5 of the honeycombs. I cut it with wire cutters, then I sort of mushed it together to form an egg. And this will serve as a grid for you and a way to hold the flowers in place, keeping it a little environmentally friendly and as a guide for you. In the past, we've used Oasis, Floral Oasis, but it's not really that good for the environment. So I created my little egg. I will now stuff it in there without cutting myself. And I did that for you because I know my friends you might have cut yourselves. So when I'm about to create a floral arrangement, I think about where is this arrangement going. So you think about the 8 principles and elements of design, and those are space. Like, what part of your house are you going to put it in? Is it going to be in a big corner? Then you'd want a grander scale. Is it going on the dinner table where you want to look at your guests overnight, or maybe not? The light, is it natural light? Is it going to be a fluorescent light, or whatever type of lighting you have in your house? Color, and as you see, I've chosen a variety of colors. Line, form, size, pattern, and texture. Those are the 8 elements of design, and we'll also touch upon the 6 principles of design, which is balance, rhythm, dominance, contrast, proportion, and scale. And as I mentioned, if you've got a small space, you don't really want to have large flowers. So you all picked up your bag, and in your bag you received a packet of the flower food, and it's called Chrysal, but in your bucket of flowers. And what I did before you got your flowers is I conditioned them. And if you condition your flowers, no matter where you get them from, whether it's the supermarket or the wholesaler, but I get them from the wholesaler, you should do this, and this helps them last a long time. So I'm just going to, you should have already done this, as I wrote on the little note to you all, and that will help your flowers drink. So in the bucket, you have roses, and this is called Kahala. Isn't that a beautiful coral color? And when I choose the flowers, when I'm making an arrangement, I sort of build it around what's available at the wholesale market. And these just spoke to me. So I went with this coral color rose. And when you get roses, whether it's from the supermarket, from Costco, or your honey buys you some nice roses, you want to condition them. And as you see, these roses have all the foliage taken off except for the top 2. So I cut off all the foliage and also the little prickers at the bottom, and gave it a fresh cut and stuck it in a bucket with the floral food of warm water. You also have ranunculus, and that ranunculus are these beautiful little round flowers that almost are like mini garden roses or mini peonies. And to condition these, you cut off the bottom, you dip them in boiling hot water for about 10 seconds, and then you stick it in a bucket of cool water with that floral food. You have Veronica, and this is named after my good friend Veronica, who is also watching from home, and I know not from Zoom. So Veronica is conditioned in cool water with the flower food. I have white hydrangeas, dahlias, and these funny looking pods, which are called Nigella pods, that add just a little bit of texture, and they look sort of like hairy little eggs. And this is the parvifolia. So you're watching, you should have also received a Zoom link So if you haven't tuned into Zoom, you can just click on that link if you're able to. I know some of you have your TV sets in one room and the computer in another, but if you wanted to ask me a question or show me what you're working on, you could do that with Zoom. So let's dig in. So you should also have some snips, and that will help you create your design. Some people like to start with foliage. I like to start with the flowers. And I'm going to start with the hydrangeas. And when I conditioned the hydrangeas, I got a big box of them. I took off all the foliage and I gave them a bath in cold water with the flower food. So these babies were sitting upside down for an hour while I conditioned the rest of the flowers, and then I gave them a clean cut at the bottom so that they were able to drink. And that way the hydrangeas, they're firm, they can take a little beating, and they'll last a long time. If you find that in your arrangement that your hydrangea starts to wilt, pull it out, stick it in cold water upside down for about an hour, and then pull it out, and it should rejuvenate. So we're going to make sort of a not quite a traditional design, but typically in a traditional design, you have your container, which is say about 5 inches tall. You want the height of that to be 1.5 times the container. So you don't want to be up here for something this short, because that would make the scale a little bit off. So I'm going to take my scissors, my clips, you can all take your clips, take a hydrangea, and give it a cut maybe at around like 4 inches, and cut it on a slant. And if you have one of those little knobs, just cut it below it. I'm going to stick the first hydrangea in sort of on an angle. So as you can see, it's sort of overhanging on the edge a little bit while covering up a lot of space. So if you get healthy hydrangeas, they take up a lot of real estate and they add a nice texture. So I'm going to get the second one and do the same thing. I'm going to cut it around there. So now this one might be a little long because sometimes hydrangeas are a little bit leggy. I am going to stick this one on the opposite side, but I don't like how that's sticking out. It sort of looks like ears. So I might cut it a little bit more because I want it to rest a little bit more closely to the lip of the container. So now I have two, and you see how they're just sort of resting on the edge. I will now take the third hydrangea and do the same exact thing. And if I were home working, I would have one of those lawn refuse bags right here, and I'd be tossing everything in that bag and then haul it away on lawn refuse day. So I'm just going to take this third hydrangea and stick it over here because it looks like it needs a spot there. So now right there, it's already starting to form a nice little round shape. You each received 4 or 5 roses. So start with one, and see how beautifully those have opened up already. I'm going to cut off more foliage, and that will also result in this drinking a little bit more. So I'm going to put a rose in the middle, and with that rose in the middle, I'd like it to be a little bit taller. So I want it to be as tall as the hydrangeas. So sort of measure it or eyeball it, and so that's maybe about 8 inches. I'm going to cut it there, take off all the foliage, and stick it on the top. And it sort of rests on its own, as you can see. And I will continue to do that with the rest of the roses, cutting off the foliage. And as your arrangement starts to age, if you see that they're starting to look bad, you can always take them out, like pull out a flower, give it a fresh cut, and change the water. So on this one, I might cut it a little bit shorter than the last one. And if you want a flower, if you want it to be seen from another side, you can stick it in on an angle. So now it's facing you. And if you're sitting at the dinner table, you could see that just by, turning it around, and they're not all facing up. And continue to do that with the rest of your roses. So I'm going to cut this one, maybe about the same. I'm cutting off the rest of the foliage. And I'm going to put this one right here, because that's sort of like right in the, can you see this spot there? There's a good space for it, and it fits perfectly. And I'm sort of getting a line of this beautiful coral color. And as I mentioned, some people like to put the foliage first. I like to do the flowers first and then fill it in with foliage later. So here's another rose. And I'm going to stick that one right on the side there. So now I've got 4 roses in there. I also, in your buckets, gave you 2 dahlias, and it's dahlia season. So you got these beautiful blooms. And what I love to do with dahlias is, especially if they have the little buds on them, that adds another texture. So this one I am going to cut, with the V, I'm going to try to salvage this bud. So I gave the bud the long stem, and the flower has the shorter stem. So I want this to be seen. I'm going to put this at a lower spot and stick it there, so it's sort of shining around on the side. And I'd like this to stick up, just to be a little whimsical. So I'm going to cut this one a little longer and have this stick up just out of nowhere. So I don't want it to be moundy and totally perfect. Now I only had 1 dahlia, but you all should have 2. So I will now put in the ranunculus, and as I mentioned, I seared them with hot water, and then I cut them and conditioned them in cool water. So what I did with the dahlia now, I'm going to do the same thing with this ranunculus. I'm going to cut it there. So now I have a long piece, and I'm going to make this a little bit shorter and let this little wild bud stick out the top. And another rule is you don't want foliage in the water, because that would contaminate it and could cause your flowers to wilt a little faster. And if you in the past have gotten, that's a little too tall, so I'm going to cut this a little shorter. I've seen people get arrangements that have the flower foam, and they save the flower foam. You never want to save the flower foam. You really can't use it again. It doesn't absorb the water, and then your flowers would die, and it would probably harbor a lot of bacteria. So if you have gotten arrangements in the past that has that green cube of flower foam, toss it. Don't use it again. It's really not good. So now with your ranunculus, let's take another ranunculus and just sort of fill in the gaps. So there's a space on the top. I will put that there. And the thing with flowers, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be pretty, and I don't really know very many flowers that aren't pretty. And it's fun to do, it's relaxing to do. I look at it as I paint with flowers. Beth Neville paints with paints, and I think Beth's watching. Hi, Beth. So I've cut this ranunculus a little bit shorter, and I'm just going to stick that in. And did you notice that, I just happened to find these flowers at the market, and they were pretty much all the same color. The dahlia had the pinks and the corals of the ranunculus, and the same with the roses, and they just sung to me. So here's a double budded ranunculus. I am going to stick that in there also. And it gives it just a little crazy whimsical thing popping out at the top. So let's go with, if you haven't used up your roses, let's go with another rose. And if you have any questions, if you haven't logged into the Zoom, feel free to do so. I won't be answering my phone if you call me now to make fun of me, but I've put that rose right on the top. So now, I don't know if you can see, but it's filling in. And I will just continue to fill in with the ranunculus. And the thing about floral arranging, you can always buy flowers. You can get them from the market. You can get them from farms. Costco always has flowers at a reasonable price. And they're fun to play with, and it's something you can do all year round. Some people grow flowers. I have a big garden, as you know, but I don't usually pick my flowers. For some reason, I just like to look at them from the window. So this is sort of shaping up, and I will continue with the ranunculus. Am I going too fast? Should I slow down? You could tell me if I am, if you logged in, but there. So now we're getting some more. Okay, so you also have Dusty Miller, and I am going to show you how to cut these up to give you about 3 different stems so that you can make 2 of those go a long way. And again, the Veronica. And at the last minute, which is not on your list, I gave you a delphinium, and I will show you how to make one of these go a long way. And the funny, like I said, the funny little pods are called Nigella pods, and that's what these are here. I don't have any in my bucket because I gave them to you, but that's what this is. And you could stick that in later. And you could even go in your garden or the side of the road, and those little grass things. That would be a fun little whimsical thing to add. So and you also have, I wanted to show you this beautiful Cymbidium orchid. So this is how the orchids are sold. They are sold on a stem, and sometimes you're lucky and you can get multiple blooms. So it's like this one has about 6 on it. So what I did is I bought one of these because I like to add a little bit of orchid on top. And I put them, you get these little tubes that sometimes if you buy flowers, you buy these tubes. And the reason orchids are tubed is they don't really like to be in a container or a vase with other flowers. They somehow contaminate it. So I just took an old stem from a rose that I had cut, and I taped with floral tape the orchid or the tube to the thing. So that can go in. If you find that you have a hole in your arrangement, just stick this in at the end. But I just wanted to show you a little trick of making the orchids go a long way. And you can stick them in just by using these flower tubes and gluing it to, or taping it to a stem. So I'm going to take the Dusty Miller, and this one's pretty leggy. So I'm going to find a spot that has like a little juncture there and cut that one short. So I cut it short, and I'm just going to go on the side and see where there's a hole. So maybe right here, I'm going to stick it in between the 2 hydrangeas, and just to add a little bit of more color, more texture. And now with this here, I can do that again. So if I want a taller one to come out the middle, I could stick that right in the middle, stick it down, and just a little bit shows up and adds a little bit of color out of the top. And now I've got, well, this one broke, so I will cut that off. And when you're doing flowers, you never want to have a stem sticking up. It's almost like having your slip showing. You just cut that down so it's not showing. You don't want to see these cuts in there, but with this type of foliage, you can hide it. So I am going to find another spot, maybe under here, to give a little more contrasting color with the rose. And you can manipulate these leaves to go around the side like that. So And I still have one more, and you should all have one more too. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to cut off the top there with that, and I am going to stick this one right here. So right underneath the hydrangea and the rose, and popping right out of there is the ranunculus bud, just to add a little, like a little whimsical texture. And, you know, I'm going to look down a little bit here to see if there are any holes. And now I'm going to build up the top a little bit more. So I am going to take my first Veronica and pull off any of the foliage except for the top. And I'm going to line all three of them up, because what I like to do is sort of have them a little different height. And to get a little different height, you can cut them, like line them up and then cut them. And here's the third. So I'm going to line them up because I want them to sort of stick out, and I don't want them to be uniform. So if I cut all these now like this, they should stick out at different angles and at different heights. So let's start with this side. I'll stick this one in there. That's a little too tall, so I'll stick it out. And because I used the chicken wire, I can pull it out. If it was Oasis, once you stick a flower in Oasis, you can't pull it out again because it creates air pockets. So there's one. I'm going to cut this down just a little bit more. So see, it's sort of on an angle a little bit, and I'll do the same with this third one. And so I'm adding another color in there, the darker purple, against this sort of pave effect of roses and ranunculus. So, and I will now show you how to make one delphinium last a little bit longer. So I'm going to try to find a place in the middle where I can cut it and have a little bit of a stem and a little bit of height. So these things are they are made up of all these little tiny periwinkle blue flowers. So I just cut it there. So now I have two. So with the longer stem, I'm just going to cut it there, and I'm going to stick it sort of right near this coral color, because look at that beautiful contrast. Isn't that pretty? And I'm going to stick this one on this side. Just find a spot, like paint with your flowers and whatever looks good to you. So now you have that in there. So I don't think I can put any more flowers in there, but I do have this little bit of parvifolia, which is a type of eucalyptus. It smells really good. And you don't need a lot. So I'm just going to cut little pieces of this and tuck them in. And I can do the same thing. I can cut this, pull off the bottom two leaves, and sort of stick it in where it might need a little bit of green. Just a little bit of touch. And same over here. And it sort of splits it up, and I could even put one up off the top. So just keep going around, and mine fell off the table, so I'm not going to go get it. And I think I will take this last bit of Dusty Miller and stick this on the top, because there's a hole there, and you can always manipulate the leaf so that it's coming out and going that way. And so now you have your orchid, and I'm going to find a place where it could use a hole, or it has a hole, and I do have one on top. So hopefully you are you're at this stage of your arrangement, and I think I will cut this a little shorter, because when I tuck this in, you are not going to see the tube, because as I mentioned, you don't want the tube to show, because it's like having your slip show. So it's just something a little different, adds a lot of elegance to an arrangement, and it just brightens up another spot. So my parvifolia miraculously appeared from a little elf that brought it in, thank you. And I will stick it on this side, and really doesn't need a whole lot. Some of the arrangements now that being created are a little more airy and much more whimsical. Everybody has their own style, and it's fun. It's just fun to play, and like I said, you can do this all year round, and it's a way to be creative, keep yourselves busy, and have fun. So if you are in the comfort of your home right now, which you are, I hope you're enjoying this, because I'm having fun. And I think that's about all. I can probably put one more ranunculus in there, because as I mentioned, I didn't have 2 dahlias, but you should have room for your 2 dahlias, and I'll just stick this one right up here. So I'm running out of room. And if you know, a lot of these materials can be purchased. I mean, I'm sure you all have containers in your home. When choosing a container, I want you to think about the opening, because the wider the opening, the more flowers it will eat up. And some people have said to me, oh, I've got this gorgeous container. Then I looked at it and the opening is this big. And that would be a huge arrangement. And like I said, it would eat up so many flowers, you'd never fill it. You could if you had a big wallet. But so this one doesn't want to go in, so I might have to give up on the idea. Sometimes you just end up with too much. So I'm going to sort of force it, sticking up a little bit, and so there you go. What do you think? Any questions out there from Zoom land? Maureen, how you doing? Are you up? Are you at this stage yet? How about you, Meredith, Rachel? I feel like Romper Room. Remember the Romper Room lady? She could look through her magic mirror and say, I see you, who's a good doobie. Carol and Paula, I know you're not good doobies. But anyway, there's your arrangement. So if you have any questions, you have about 50 seconds left to tune in. And if not, I would like to show you the full circle view. And as I mentioned, continue to add water. You can always do the fingertip test, stick it in water it to the top, because these are in water. You have the flower food in there, so they should do well. So I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching this special episode of Garden Path. It's been a long time. We've sort of been out of it for a while, but maybe we'll do this again if you enjoyed it. So thanks for tuning in.